In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, 3 brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Brian Fry, Chad Robinson, and Russell Guest. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Guest, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host, Chad Robinson. Chad, how are you doing?
I'm very excited today, Russell.
Yes, we're going big today, and to join us for a big podcast, we have a tall guy, Chris Satis. How you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing very good. And yourself?
I'm good. You're coming to us from the Virginia Beach area, is that right?
That is correct. Virginia is for lovers and dinosaurs.
Now, before we get going, I think you've got a pretty interesting project. Do you want to tell people a little bit about what do you do?
Yeah, I have a podcast myself called What Do You Do? The career podcast. It's more of like a career day for anyone of all ages. You know of your important jobs like police, firemen, doctors, lawyers, etc. But there's jobs out there that I never knew existed, such as a chicken sexer. Their sole job is to sex the chickens, male, female. Digital sign technicians, nuclear physicists. Like I never really knew about that until I talked to one and learned what they do.
Was it Denise Richards from the Bond movie?
No. But it's really interesting. Pretty good lineup. Season 1 finished about 3 years ago, and season 2 is in the works. So if you're hearing this and you want to be on a podcast, reach out to me, and I'd love to interview you.
And where do they reach out to you?
What do you do podcast at gmail.com.
Perfect. So if you want to tell people about what you do, talk to Chris, and he'll help spread that message out there. So that's pretty cool, Chris. But now we got to get to know you a little better here as far as your movies go. So we got to ask a couple of hard-hitting questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
Now, if you could add a sequel to a movie that does not have one, what would it be?
Okay, if we could freeze time and go back in time, I would love to see a Hook 2 with Robin Williams as Pan. Same cast, pick off. They kind of try to do it more modernly, but I'd have to say a Hook 2 with the original cast.
Oh, that's a fun choice. I'd watch that for sure. Chad, what about you?
Unpopular choice for you, Russell, but I think I want a Cabin in the Woods too.
Yeah, that seems entirely possible to happen anyway. Like, you might get your wish on that one.
Yeah, I can't spoil it. It'd be a little difficult, but I'm sure they could figure it out.
With horror movies, time travel, science fiction, comic books, there's always, there's unlimited outs. So anything's possible.
Time travel's all you need is time travel. Just restart, go back.
Yeah. I myself got hooked on one. I'd like to do The Rocketeer.
Oh, that'd be a good one too.
Yeah. Now, Chris, what's the last movie you saw?
Okay, so it was called Come and See. It's a Russian movie about World War II. It's regarded as one of the most historical, accurate World War II movies out there. It wasn't about 5-10 minutes into it, I was already furious at what was going on. It's a whole different level of war movies.
I imagine it's focused on the Eastern Front.
Yeah, it's resistance fighters in the Belarus, like that area.
Oh, that's gonna be brutal.
Yeah, it's definitely. I would rate that. I'd say it's solid 9.5 out of 10 stars just for the cinematography's on point, soundtrack on point, everything is on point. Only downside is it's dubbed, but there's English dubs, but it makes it sound kind of funny and cartoony when you hear them talking.
And Chip, what about you? What was the last movie you saw?
I finally got around to watching Insidious. I'd never seen it before.
Oh, really?
It was just one of those movies that I avoided, the trailers, that it seems like it's built around jump scares. I started out really enjoying it. I was like, oh, I don't know why I've avoided this movie. And then halfway through, I was very disappointed. If you haven't seen it, it takes a quick left turn and stops being the same movie, and disappointed me.
Okay. And the last movie I saw was The Last Airbender.
Oh no. Oh, the M. Night Shyamalan?
It was yeah. I had not seen it before, so I saw it. And you know what? It's for kids. I think the negative reviews are a little unfair. I mean, I think there's potential there to do something more epic with it and to do something really cool. So I actually really like the concept, and I wouldn't hesitate to see that material brought to life again in a different way. But, it's for kids. I think I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more if I had gotten it and I was 9 years old.
It's interesting. I have yet to see the first one, but I'll add that on my short list.
Today's movie is about dinosaurs. So if you were a dinosaur, what dinosaur would you be, Chris?
Paracephalosaurus, because A, the long name is long and it's hard to spell, but it reminds me of a child watching The Land Before Time, and I believe Ducky, the character, is a Paracephalosaurus. So yeah, Paracephalosaurus, locked in, final answer.
Okay. Chad, what kind of dinosaur are you going to be?
Do I get to be one of the made-up ones in Jurassic Park, or?
No frog DNA for you.
Oh, because their Dilophosaurus is pretty awesome.
It is.
I'm going to go with the Utah Raptor, since that's what the Jurassic Park Velociraptor was accidentally based on.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with one that's not featured in today's movies, but I like the Ankylosaurus. It's a very armored looking, stout looking dinosaur with kind of a protective back as well as a clubbed tail. So it's one you wouldn't want to mess with.
Yeah,
he's like the tank. Yeah, the tank.
Yeah, it seems pretty, like, I feel like I can just go about my business if I'm one of these. So I like the security.
He reminds me of like a horseshoe crab, because once he gets flipped over, though, game over.
Maybe, yeah, probably so. Don't do that. But anyway, as we go into today's movie, as we alluded to, is a dinosaur movie, is what, Chad?
1993's Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park comes out in 93, as Chad mentioned, and it grosses $338.9 million in the box office domestically. That's a ton of money, so it takes the crown for the box office on the air. It comes in ahead of The Fugitive, and the IMDb rating on Jurassic Park is 8.1, and the audiences of Rotten Tomatoes give it 91%, and the critics love it just as much. They give it 91% at Rotten Tomatoes as well. It wins 3 Oscars for Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Sound Editing. It wins 2 BAFTAs and 4 Saturn Awards. Chris, had you seen Jurassic Park before? If so, tell us your background with it.
So yes, I remember it clear as day. 1993. I went with one of my parents' friends. They took me, and I remember seeing it, and my dad told me that if I got scared to pinch my leg. And I remember the scene when Nedry gets the Dilophosaurus in the Jeep. My leg hurt really bad after that. And then we went to Chi-Chi's, rest in peace, right there, and I had to go to the bathroom. And I remember sitting on the toilet, just hearing the T-Rex, the feet coming at me, just waiting for him to bust in and eat me as a kid. So that's one of the highlights of the movie, that in that time in my life that I always remember.
So it shook you up a little bit, huh?
A little bit, as a little kid. I was like, I think 8 at the time. I still have all the McDonald's cups from that time too for Jurassic Park.
So have you been watching it throughout the years, or have you been away from it for a while?
Oh no, it's a family favorite here in my house. We watch it. My kids like it. My son is obsessed with it. Because when I was a kid, dinosaurs, that's always like kind of a thing that kids always like, is dinosaurs. And it's something that I think kids are always interested in, dinosaurs. And to see it come alive like it did on the movie screen, it just blew my mind, as a child seeing it. So it's on loop here. At least once a month we watch it.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And Chad, what about you? What's your background with Jurassic Park?
I saw this one pretty early too. I was a kid that was obsessed with dinosaurs. This is going to age me quite a bit, but I had DOS games where you would build your own dinosaur from skeletons and kind of create this museum. So Jurassic Park was a huge, huge hit for me. It wasn't nearly as scary as The Land Before Time, which traumatized me as a child. I was prepared for this one thanks to Land Before Time. And I went through all the the toys. I remember dino damage being the big selling point for the dinosaurs back in the day for Jurassic Park. Like, you could pull some of their flesh off, which is kind of gruesome if you think about it. But yeah, big hit.
Just out of curiosity, that game you're talking about, was it called Designosaurus 2?
Yes, it was.
Yes, I had that too.
Yeah, it was a bootleg copy. Back in the day, it was a passed around diskette. And all of these words just make me very, very old.
That's what I like about Jurassic Park, is it's like that nostalgia of like our childhood.
Yeah,
and it brings back all these sub facets of that.
They get excited. They're like an interactive CD-ROM. Those are words that just don't exist anymore.
It's a Unix system.
Yeah. That's not special.
I myself watched Jurassic Park in the movie theaters when it came out in '93, and I was captivated by it. I ended up reading like the junior novel, which it's like a kid's book version of the book. And then later, not that much down the line, a couple of years later, I picked up Michael Crichton's original book, The Jurassic Park, read The Lost World. I watched all the sequels, and to some degree, it's funny, I probably watch the sequels more because they don't stick in my memory much, and I always kind of sit there and I kind of go like, I need to give this another chance. And I've given The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 more roles than I probably have Jurassic Park, because Jurassic Park is such an implanted movie on me. Like, it made such an impact, and I love it so much. And the reality is those other ones may have started to taint it a little bit for me. So I actually haven't really returned to Jurassic Park in a long time, and watching it now really made me rediscover the love that I had of it. And it's a great movie. And I think what you guys just talked about, I was a kid who loved dinosaurs. And, this movie was thrilling. It was well made. It's one of those movies that I just genuinely believe does a good job of hitting people at lots of different age groups. Steven Spielberg is so good at creating the thrill ride that it has that mass appeal. So it has all the thrills of an Indiana Jones movie, plus it has dinosaurs. So I was pleased, and I'm still pleased with it. And it's one of those things where, and we'll talk about it, it's the kind of thing that they can't seem to recapture the magic no matter how many times they try and redo that.
I think one of the things that sticks out to me more so, like, even as an adult, go ahead, call me a sissy or whatnot, but when they pull those Wranglers up, and you see the Brachiosaurus for the first time, the soundtrack, how it stands up, everyone's reaction to this day, like, my son's next to me watching it, or my daughter, it's like a tear comes on my eye. It's like, this is like classic cinematography right there. And at the time, that's groundbreaking. The way they shot it with the Brachiosaurus being, CGI, it's just still to this day like a breathtaking moment, I think, in all of film.
Yeah. I actually feel like the Oscars only gave it the love of the technical feats, but I feel like it kind of got underappreciated for what it was. Some of the critics at the time, kind of were, like they were like, yeah, this is a popcorn movie.
Yeah.
I think it's more than that. This is a part of the show where I want to remind people there will be spoilers that lie ahead, so sit tight, and we will come back after this. And if you haven't seen Jurassic Park, please do, and enjoy the rest of this episode. We'll be back after this.
Do you love sci-fi, horror, and fantasy films? Then grab a badge for Otherworld's Film Festival, the country's premier sci-fi film festival. There will be Q&As, panels, parties, and mixers. Rub elbows with up-and-coming and established filmmakers, as well as like-minded filmgoers. Come celebrate our 7th year, December 3rd through 6th at the Galaxy Highland in Austin, Texas. Badges are now for sale at otherworldsfilmfest.com. That's otherworldsfilmfest.com.
Well, we're back, and if you haven't seen Jurassic Park, there will be spoilers that lie ahead. So, Chad, for those who haven't seen Jurassic Park since 1993, do you want to refresh people's memory?
So we have John Hammond. He's an industrialist who plans to make an island populated by cloned dinosaurs thanks to the discovery of dinosaur DNA in amber. He's sort of like the Scottish Jerry Jones. He's willing to have this grand vision of an attraction that brings everyone to his creation, but he consistently cheaps out and mismanages the behind-the-scene picture. Hammond invites Dr. Ian Malcolm, a mathematician, as well as 2 specialists in Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ellie Sattler. For legal purposes, the investor's blood-sucking attorney, Donald Gennaro, also accompanies the group. Malcolm, who's played by Jeff Goldblum, continuously mocks the idea of genetically engineering dinosaurs and, as a subscriber to chaos theory, warns that things will inevitably break down. Lucky for us moviegoers, things do go horribly wrong when an underpaid and overworked computer programmer, played by Wayne Knight, Newman, shuts down the fences during a storm in an attempt to steal some of the DNA and sell it to the highest bidder. He meets an untimely end via a Dilophosaurus, and worse for our group, the T-Rex and Velociraptors escape. T-Rex hunts Grant, played by Sam Neill, Malcolm, Gennaro, as well as Hammond's 2 grandchildren, Tim and Lex. The attorney is devoured by the T-Rex, and Malcolm is injured during the chaos, doomed to an unbuttoned shirt for the rest of the film. Grant and the 2 children narrowly escape, while Laura Dern's Ellie Sattler is paired up with Robert Muldoon. He's the island's game warden, and they are tracked by a trio of deadly velociraptors. The raptors kill Muldoon, clever girls, and turn their attention to the remaining survivors who have since reunited. Luckily for the survivors, T-Rex suddenly appears and a deadly fight between it and the raptors ensues, allowing Hammond, Grant, Sattler, Malcolm, and the children to escape.
Well done. So, we talked about this kind of creating the magic for a generation and their love of dinosaurs. Now, Chris, what is it that kids love so much about dinosaurs, and how does this movie scratch that itch?
For me, it was the unknown, and then learning about, one dinosaur. And then, everyone knows T-Rex. So you start with T-Rex, then Brontosaurus, which I guess is Brachiosaurus, then Triceratops, Stegosaurus. It just branches out. And then seeing it in the movie and seeing all these ones that you had a toy of in your hand, now you're seeing on the screen. Going back to that opening shot of the lagoon, if you will, with the Paracephalosaurus, the Brachiosaurus / Brontosaurus, whichever, just migrating. That was the magic, I think, that keeps the dinosaurs in the kids' minds, and then seeing it now.
Yeah, I think it's just like you said, it's a mystery. These animals aren't here. I mean, kids are captivated when you go to the zoo, and they love larger creatures like giraffes and elephants and rhinoceroses. So, I mean, there's that love for there. But then when you tell them these things used to be around, but they're not anymore, it's this, man, what were they like kind of thing. And it's imagination, it's mystery, and it's all coming together. And no wonder it's such an amazing time, because the world really did belong to them, and you want to see them so bad. To have the idea of them coming on the big screen to see them seems rather appealing, and it's just one of those things where it had never been done like this before, I think.
There was something that I saw. My little brother was in the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. There's a T-Rex museum out there. I guess T-Rex had something to do in Colorado. But the coolest thing to date, in this museum, they had a fossil of the skin of T-Rex that was preserved, and you can still feel it. They let you feel it. And that is probably the coolest thing that I've ever felt in my life, knowing that at one time, replace that with the fossil and all that, that was a living T-Rex.
That's pretty cool. I mean, Russell, I think you nailed it for me as far as the zoo aspect. We like seeing these mammoth creatures, elephants, giraffes, and then you add the element of danger with the T-Rex, and I think of tigers. We're just captivated by these dangerous animals that we could see, and the first shots, Chris, you're right. It's just, I forget that I'm watching a movie. It's just mesmerizing seeing these majestic creatures, these giants that were around, and you want so badly for this to exist, even though I think I tend to side with Malcolm of, we shouldn't do this. Like, we have some of the DNA, but we probably shouldn't do this.
Yeah, I think, imagine if you saw it now, if there was a zoo that had dinosaurs. Imagine us as adults growing up with dinosaurs, but then seeing it. Like, I think that would collectively blow all minds. But again, going back to Ian, chaos theory, it can't end good.
Yeah, I sign me up. I don't care how many times I've seen this go wrong, and 6 movies now that we've seen it go wrong. I'm still buying a ticket. Sometimes doing what you shouldn't do feels really good.
If that's my fate, I'll take it.
Oh man, I volunteer you as tribute then. Have fun.
I'll live stream it.
Yeah, I would totally go to Jurassic Park. Let's do this. Yeah. But I think Chris is right though. I mean, it was powerful to come back to it as an adult. I hadn't been back to it in a long time, and I was impressed at how much the magic really was there. And it kind of reminds me that I was asking myself, why can they never recapture the magic? And Spielberg was talking about it. He said he didn't want it to be a monster movie. He said that he wanted it to be about how science could bring, to Chad's point, majestic animals back to life again for us. And that is something that none of the other movies that have come from this point on have effectively captured. There's not that sense of awe. When you pull up and you see those brachiosauruses, the magic, that dinosaurs are alive again, and it looks really good. The other movies, I think, feel like they need to deliver action sequence. And this movie is so much more than action. It's about the characters. It's about the people, and it's about how the people are taken aback by it.
Yeah, one of the things, I don't know if you saw it, the original stop motion test footage for the dinosaurs. Now looking at it, it looks, really hokey. I guess the movie was it David and the Argonauts with the skeletons, that kind of stuff, where it's
Jason and the Argonauts, yeah.
Yeah, yep. Where it's real choppy, and they had the stop motion of the T-Rex going on one of the cars. They had the different movements, and then when they tried the CGI, I mean, looking at it now, even with the HD copy of it, it looks, you can tell it's CGI now compared to, let's say, Fallen Kingdom, where it looks really good. But still to this day, I think that gap in the bridge in technology right there, from the stop motion that they were planning on doing to CGI, which they went with, I think that is what really sucked me in as a kid, because I think stop motion, my brain would have been that's kind of fake, but the CGI is what knocked it out of the park.
To me, it goes back to my issue with the Star Wars prequels versus the originals. They used real puppets in this movie for a lot of it, for the T-Rex and for the Triceratops, and I particularly go to the Triceratops scene. This animatronic that's breathing, and you see the actors just express this joy and wonder around it, and I don't think they do that with a CGI. You see actors like Ian McKellen who's crying because he's acting to tennis balls and with a green screen, whereas these people had what they're visualizing right in front of them, and it's breathing and it's reacting, and it's just this visceral reaction for me. I can't stop smiling at 2 paleontologists reacting to, we just saw a real life Triceratops.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, the scene where the T-Rex is attacking the Explorer, and the kids are in there with that rain. I don't know if you knew this, but that T-Rex was kind of crazy, and it was short circuiting. But the scream that you hear when it smashes the roof down and breaks the skylight, it wasn't supposed to do it that hard, and the kids screamed out of sheer terror because they didn't know that. So that's that scream is legit 100% we're gonna die.
Yeah, it turns out as a wet T-Rex is really, really heavy.
Yeah.
And so the impact of this movie was just staggering. I don't know about you guys, how many Jurassic Park toys did you have?
Every single one. That was Christmas that year. I had the compound, all the figures. In fact, I still have, I'd say 40 to 50% that I've, my son, who's 2 now, he plays with, because I'm a collector, but at the same time, I played with them, and that's the point, is to be played with and for the imagination. So now he has, a Velociraptor stuffed animal from 93 that he sleeps with, that I slept with, But yeah, I had the toys. I had those crazy 90s color t-shirts,
Yeah.
It's the bright greens and pinks and yellow. I had the lunchbox. Did you guys ever have the lunchbox? It was red, and it had the T-Rex Explorer seat on it, and the thermos mug on the inside had danger radiation or something.
I was still rocking the Dick Tracy lunchbox, but no. But I did like I mean, that seems like a piece of paraphernalia I could have had.
It's a good one because they ended up changing it because of like the thermos, like saying radiation and danger. Like, I guess people didn't like that, so they had to change it. Got the logo on it, but I think I have that somewhere here still to this day.
I mean, and you had Weird Al's claymation music video for Jurassic Park as well. You know, you've really made it in the pop culture zeitgeist when Weird Al either makes your song into a parody or he uses you as a subject in your song. So that's the level of culture this reached to.
It's legacy right there.
Yes, Weird Al is the barometer of how important to pop culture you really are. Star Wars. Big deal. You're in. You know, you're good.
You're paraphrasing Kurt Cobain there, aren't you? I think he's the one that said that's how they knew they made it.
But didn't like Star Wars get the prequel?
Yeah,
too.
The saga begins.
Yeah, that might be Chad's favorite part of those.
That was great.
But you experience the thrills, but you also have like these wonderful set of characters in it too. Let's talk about the people in it, because people are a big part of why this movie is so lovable. We like the characters so much. So, Chris, talk about Dr. Grant, Ellie, and Dr. Hammond. Like, tell us about like why you want to put your arms around this movie and what keeps you coming back.
Sam Neill. Well, it was the first time I ever saw Sam Neill, as a child. And now I'm plagued by when I see other films that he's done, I can only see him as Grant, unfortunately. Same thing for Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum. But Richard Attenborough, being Hammond, I think the only other movie I saw with him was Gandhi. I know he's done a bunch more, but I do recall that Spielberg talked about a retirement to come do Jurassic Park. And I can't think really of, between Grant, Ellie, Malcolm, and Hammond, I can't really think of any, at that time, actors that could have replaced them. I know there's a couple out there that, auditioned for the roles but didn't get it. And I was pleasantly surprised with B.D. Wong as Dr. Wu, young Dr. Wu, and how they were able to bring him to the newer movies. And Bob Peck, he was the one character that was my favorite. I loved Muldoon.
I loved Muldoon too.
I loved everything about Muldoon, just like his Spas 12, and the opening scene with Shoot Her. That's what sucked me in. So I think, without a doubt, I can say Bob Peck playing Robert Muldoon is what sucked me into Jurassic Park.
I loved him too. If there was a spinoff we need, I kind of want to know the Muldoon story before he goes here, because you just know he's been on a ton of safaris and had some adventures in the jungles.
He's seen some stuff.
He has.
Yeah.
You can't wear a hat like that and have not seen some stuff.
Oh, totally. And like what Chad mentioned earlier, like with Wayne Knight as Nedry. So my day job, I'm a cybersecurity manager, and it's always the joke, like, when something's going great, why do we pay you this much? And then when it breaks, it's, why do we pay you this much? And for him, it's like, when him and Hammond are going back and forth about pay, that's what just makes me laugh all the time, just being in the IT world. It's always a constant, like, in 2020, that's still a debate that's always happens when things don't work right. And so here he is debugging, quote, his code, just for it to go awry, and him do his whole engine, try to get off the island with the embryos. I think Wayne Knight was the best cast for Nedry, just his personality. The only thing that bugs me with his scenes is when he slips and you hear that comical, like, whoop noise.
The slide whistle.
Yeah, that kills me. Like, I laugh every time I hear that.
I think we know not to put slide whistles in movies. I know The Man with the Golden Gun has this amazing barrel roll scene with a car jumping over a river, like doing 360-degree rotation, and it's amazing. And they pull a slide whistle during it, so this is not as distracting as that, at least.
Yeah, there's a nice fan edit where instead it's hitting the Bond theme song, and it's so much better. But I'm with Chris. I walk away from Jurassic Park now as an adult in the more technical IT world and say, this isn't so much don't play God, it's don't neglect your IT staff, man. That's the cautionary tale.
100%. And the thing that I learned after the fact, all those computers you see, all the servers, those are actual, like, state-of-the-art of 93 time actual stuff. And the file browser they used for the system, turn the powers and phones back on, that was actual GUI that they had that time as well. that built out. So that always impresses me when I go back and watch it.
Yeah, but this was top to bottom. It was a great cast. I know later on we're going to talk about a recast, and that becomes a little difficult.
That is hard.
But man, they nailed everyone. I mean, Laura Dern did such a great job. Chris was talking about who would you get? Maybe Helen Hunt. This was around her Twister era, but I feel like Laura Dern added some sternness to it. She added some strength, and Wayne Knight is just the perfect antagonist for anything. Just stick him in there. He's got that cocky, slimy arrogance. And whenever you can slip Samuel L. Jackson into a blockbuster, you should do it.
Yeah.
I just wish that, just an outtake, I would like to see Hammond, like, glare at him and go, Nedry.
I kind of want to see an outtake of Samuel L. Jackson dying and him uttering his famous catchphrase, even if it doesn't get to be the full catchphrase as the Velociraptor's getting him.
So let's talk about this. This is also a science fiction movie because it's kind of funny. Like you don't often think about it as such, but for Michael Crichton, the writer of the book, as he was talking about it, at the core of this is that classic, should man tamper with the natural order? I wanted to ask you, how do you guys like that from this point? I mean, you have what Ian kind of asks, should you do what you're doing?
I see them very much as like a yin and a yang with Ian. He seems to be like the voice of reason compared to Hammond and Ingen. And it goes back, I think, to the scene like talking about the fleas in the flea circus. I don't know. It's a tough one.
You're right there. I mean, the Hammond's wearing white and Malcolm's wearing black, so they literally are the yin and the yang throughout the movie. The notes I saw was Spielberg actually associated with John Hammond, which kind of makes sense. He's a creator. He likes to conjure things, whereas Michael Crichton said he's Malcolm. And I come down on the side of Malcolm. There are orders of nature and there are orders of God that man should not mess with. And resurrecting long extinct, dangerous animals. Maybe we could resurrect the dodo bird and it won't have a great impact on the ecosystem, but resurrecting T-Rexes and velociraptors and things like that, there's a certain degree, you get down to eugenics. We've covered Gattaca. Should you mess with the human genome? Look at the society that created. So, by the way, check out Gattaca. But
no, that's a great comparison. Like, that's a theme that we had earlier this year. Michael Crichton had said, technology, everybody thinks it's a wonderful thing. And isn't it a wonderful thing that everybody has a computer now? And he goes, I say yes, and I say no. He has hesitation with that. And so you're right. The voice of the book is far more pessimistic and darker than the movie. And I think, to your point, Chad, I think why that is because Stephen honestly identified with Hammond.
Yeah.
I think, piggybacking off of Chad, if we actually did anything and you're playing God, I think more recently, to me, it's playing God, where they have like the new mosquitoes that are like scientifically engineered so they can't breed, that they're super sexy for the females, and it kills the reproduction of these mosquitoes. It's like, what eats that mosquito that's now going to have a harder time finding food? Like, what change is that going to like divide in the ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah, butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Not that I'm recommending Ashton Kutcher's.
Similarly, I mean, like, if somebody comes, with an invasive species of plant or animal, and the next thing you know, it overruns an environment, like, and we're not very good at controlling these things. That's why some rivers and food chains have been totally decimated by, like, Asian carp. And, like, next thing you know, there's, like, fish that are literally jumping out of the water everywhere because they're overpopulated.
I love those stories in the news, though, because it's always escalating. It's like there's some species that we want to get rid of, so we've introduced wolves. Oh no, wolves are now the alpha in this environment, and they have taken over, and now we have a wolf problem instead of a deer problem.
Or Burmese pythons in the Everglades. They're overrunning the Everglades now, so... But another good point, though, you said Malcolm is kind of at odds with Hammond. I think Grant's kind of another piece, a guy who's like finds himself caught in the middle. Like he represents the past. He's digging up the past dinosaurs. He's digging up the fossils. He hates computers. But he's a hands-on guy. Like he's in the dirt. And he kind of serves as a foil to Hammond as well, who, to Egan's point, like you've taken the science from other people and you've just stood on it with no accomplishment or respect for it. And you were so busy, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop to think if they should. Grant represents the other side of things, of that, the scholar's approach to that. So it was interesting to see Grant multiple times thinking, oh, maybe we're going to be extinct, or as paleontologist, my career is toast now. Like they have no need for me anymore. Like there's a scene where he drops the raptor claw out of the tree when the kids ask him, so what are you going to do now? And he's like, I don't know. And it's sad for him.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite Grant moments, I don't know if you, like this is after seeing the movie a couple times, but in the helicopter as they're dropping, he's trying to, buckle up his seatbelt. He has two female ends, kind of foreshadowing the rest of the movie of how, all dinosaurs are female. But just seeing that how he has both female ends trying to struggle, to get buckled up. I thought that was really cool foreshadowing.
I got to ask at this point, did either one of you guys happen to read the book?
I did, yeah.
Because there's a number of book to movie differences. It's very faithful in some ways, but obviously there's a lot of differences as well. Are there any things you want to touch on in terms of how this movie maybe went away from the book?
The one that sticks out to me, which I'm glad the movie didn't do, just because I love Hammond, is in the books, Hammond dies.
Yep, and the lawyer lives.
He's not as big of a jerk in the book, the lawyer, at that point, though. Like, he doesn't just, like he goes back looking for people. He's not, he's caught up in the middle of it. He's not this, we don't like this guy, is the brush they paint him with in the movie, and he's far more simple in that. So, yeah. To your point, you don't hate that he lived, because the characters are not so black and white in the book. Nobody's all good, nobody's all bad kind of thing. Malcolm's a lot more cowardly in the book. You don't like him nearly as much.
And Tim and Lex are swapped as far as ages and roles. Tim's I hate saying hacker because nothing she did was hacking in this movie. It was like NCIS hacking where they're both banging on keyboards. But yeah.
Enhance.
Yeah. That's not how it works. You can't get a license plate from space.
The one part of the book that I liked a lot, randomly throughout the book, it was like the fractals with the chaos theory from Malcolm. And that was one of the parts that I always enjoyed when I was reading the book, to get to one of those where it dives a little bit deeper into the chaos theory.
I thought one that this movie never kind of came to total fruition with, and the other sequels didn't really pay dividends off of it either. Ellie and Alan are not a couple in the book, and Alan doesn't even hate kids in the book. And it's one of those things where they kind of lead that down the road of like Alan has to evolve to learn to deal with kids, otherwise he will lose this woman that he likes, Ellie. They don't go dive too deep into that well, and perhaps it's because that wasn't in the book. That was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, I think the people like Hammond, and they like this version of him a lot more. And when he dies in the book, it's somewhat justified. It's a dark irony of this thing that I've created. I thought I could control it, and it ended up overtaking me. So that theme is here in this movie, but it's far less vicious. And there's a lot of violence, obviously, that's taken out, and there's some other action scenes and stuff that are taken out of the book as well. And so Spielberg has such a good ability to make this for everybody. And all of the changes, I go back and I look at it, I sit there and go, the book's really good, but this isn't an R-rated movie, and it sure is thrilling. And once you're 7 or 8 years old, you can start to really enjoy this movie, and everybody from that age up is going to love it.
Right. It just, with the violence of the dinosaurs, I mean, it's not over, like in the, Lost World, you see the two T-Rexes rip the guy apart, but in Jurassic Park, I think the most you see is the T-Rex taking Martin Ferrero off the toilet. That's the one big death scene. And then Nedry's death. But as far as seeing it fully play out, that's the only time off my head I can really see it, because Muldoon, you see her jump on him, but not like super crazy. There's a little bit, but not much. But the full death is, the lawyer.
I think PG-13 was the right decision for this movie. Otherwise, a lot of us as kids wouldn't have gotten to it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The only other thing that I thought would have been really cool to have had, and we kind of got it later, there's a lot of the cool parts of this book that we get later through the next two movies. In the book, Grant and Tim and Lex have to go through a airborne dinosaur cage like an atmosphere, which is pretty dangerous. And unfortunately, we do it with characters we don't like as much later with Jurassic Park 3. But I also don't know that the technology, which they were really pioneering on this, I don't know that they were capable of doing that. So I think they wisely worked around it. But when you read that part in the book, you sit there and say, man, these predatory airborne dinosaurs, that's an intense scene. And that would be pretty cool to see in this movie.
Oh, yeah. At some point, you run out of budget and man hours and everything else. Like you said, they're pioneering and making up a lot of it on the spot and just coming down to the final day hoping it works.
Yeah, I like though on the maps for the park, you do see, the atrium is there and they have it all built out. But I'm glad I agree. I'm glad they didn't show it. I'm glad it's there on the island, but not shown.
Now, we were talking a little bit about the characters here. Steven Spielberg delayed the filming several weeks to get the cast that he wanted. Attenborough was finishing another movie, Chaplin, in 92, and he also had to wait for Sam Neill. And so there were some moving of the time and the schedule to get the right cast involved, and I'm glad he did, because it really is a hard-to-recast movie. I don't think I've seen this many possibilities, to your point, Chris. I mean, every movie that Chad and I do, the internet always tells us, undisputably, all these factual people that might have gotten the role or went out for the role.
Matt Damon.
Yeah, I've never seen a movie with so many possible recastings as this one. I almost hesitate to even go into this, but for Grant, Harrison Ford was in theory offered the role, but he didn't feel like it was right for him. And after the movie came out, he said he was right to turn it down. Other names include Kurt Russell, Richard Dreyfuss, William Hurt. I can't see anybody other than Sam Neill doing it. This is Sam Neill's perfect role.
It's way too close to Indy when he's out digging, doing the actual paleontology work. I would not have liked Ford just almost typecasting himself in that.
I don't think Ford has the warmth with the kids and I could see him not liking kids, but I don't see him having the warmth that Sam Neill has here.
I think what they should do is every character played by Ian Goldblum. Even Mr. DNA. Do them all. And just have that laugh all the time.
Yes. Chris sent me 10 hours straight of Jeff Goldblum laughing in a loop like that. So I didn't watch all 10 hours.
It's the nighttime music for you.
There you go. And I might have to cut myself off on this one, but in terms of Ellie, there are a lot of names the internet, which is never wrong, links to having gone out for this role, including Sandra Bullock, Gwyneth Paltrow, Julianne Moore, Helen Hunt, Terry Hatcher, Elizabeth Hurley, Robin Wright, Nicole Kidman, Heather Graham, Renee Zellweger, Jodie Foster, Sigourney Weaver, Michelle Pfeiffer, Ali Sheedy, Gina Davis, Daryl Hannah, Jennifer Grey. I'm just going to cut it off here. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Why is Laura Dern right for this role and all of these other very impressive list of people not?
My tie would be Helen Hunt or Jodie Foster to play Ellie. Again, I think Laura Dern is the right choice, but Jodie Foster, just the way she, all of her stuff is super serious, but then there's also a sweet side to her at the same time. I think that would be a pretty good, or Helen Hunt. Both of those I would tie as a replacement.
It's funny you say you both have mentioned Helen Hunt. As a kid, I myself have gotten confused, and somehow Laura Dern being in Jurassic Park and Helen Hunt being in Twister and kind of happening at the same time, I somehow melded them into one person. So
I did that too.
Yeah, it wasn't even until I got older where I had an argument with somebody. It's like, yeah, it's the same person from Jurassic Park. And I'm like, no, it's not. And I'm like, it's not. And then I looked down and I was wrong.
I did that too for Twister. I thought it was the same person.
Poor Laura Dern, man. I had the playing cards with Laura Dern's face on it, so yeah, I remember her, and
Well, Laura Dern got the Oscar later, so she's the one laughing now. So
Yeah, even with the newer Star Wars, I mean, I keep going back to Star Wars, but as Holdo, she has a bit of a commanding presence that I think Helen Hunt doesn't.
right.
Helen Hunt has the warmth, but I think Laura Dern has the sternness needed for this role. And honestly, revisiting it, it's got a lot of feminist tones to it that I didn't pick up as a kid, where she's basically presented as an equal with all the men, and when they attempt to talk down to her, she puts them in their place very, very quickly. She's capable, and I think Laura Dern does an excellent job at conveying, hey, I know my stuff too. I belong here.
Yeah. Now, I think it's a cool character at that point in time that I think I've talked to a number of women who particularly loved this character, and the character meant a lot to them. So 100%. And also, Lex being into computers is another empowering thing for women. They changed that from the book, and Ariana Richards has said there's a lot of people who, to this day, come up to her and say that they were inspired by her, went into computers and science-related fields. So the movie did do a good job of saying that dinosaurs are not just for boys.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's cool. I don't agree with the, oh, it's a Unix system. This makes me special. Like, no, that's, yeah, no duh. but I'm glad it worked. I'm glad future women grew up to know that that's complete nonsense.
So let's talk about the magic that Steven Spielberg brings to Jurassic Park. He's such a big piece of why this works. We keep talking about how there's the book version and then there's this movie version, and Steven Spielberg is probably very much at the core of what made this so universal. Steven Spielberg's got an amazing career. We've covered him a number of times in the show, but Chris, tell us what your opinion is of Steven Spielberg as a director, and then in turn, why you like him here.
So as a director, as a kid, I also watched the Indiana Jones, and all the Indiana Jones, it sucked me in. And he just has a way of all of his shots, all of everything he puts in the films, it just sucks you in. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws. I don't know about you guys, but after watching Jaws, I steered clear of the shallow end of the pool because Jaws might get me, or the ocean. He just has a way of shooting and telling the stories where it's just so believable, more so than as a kid. But now I saw him as, the BFG. That was a story I read as a child, and I read it to my kids now as an adult. And watching the BFG come to life with, the CGI. The Adventures of Tintin was another one by Hergé. I love those graphic novels and would collect them. And once again, here he goes, bringing this one-dimensional book to life. He just seems to be able to do that. Everything he touches that is a book or a graphic novel, he is able to hit out of the park and bring it to life.
I'm a fan of Doom. I could never get past the title BFG because that means an entirely different thing.
A very powerful weapon.
Yes, a big freaking gun, and that is not the middle word. But yeah, I mean, he's coming off of Hook, which I think to this day, if you run into Brian Fry, he'll be doing the Rufio, and all of us. So what a great reimagining of a classic tale. And you're right, Jaws. Just the wonder and variety of the creations. But he's doing Schindler's List simultaneously. So he's doing this. I read that he was having trouble finding joy, and it would take him hours just to build up energy to answer basic things on Jurassic Park because he's in this world of Schindler's List, and he goes on to win the Oscar for, rightfully so. But the joy and energy he could still manage to bring while doing a movie like that simultaneously to Jurassic Park just speaks to his talent and how great he's been for cinema for as long as he's been in the game.
Piggybacking off of you, Saving Private Ryan in '98, I remember all the buzz of all the veterans that were having to walk out because it was so lifelike. And the PTSD and the memories were coming back. He was able to reproduce that, to the T. I wouldn't call that, bad publicity by any means, but I think it just shows how of a perfectionist he can be when it comes to recreating these environments.
Yeah, he's great at his craft.
Yeah, he really is. He knows how to move the camera in ways that keep you absolutely at the edge of your seat and engaged. And he does it well, too, with just dialogue scenes. He makes you interested in what the characters are doing. He draws you into a scene really well. So he knows how to tell a story. He converts things well and keeps the pace of his movies going well. But he's also a master at the within the scene management. And again, if you watch the behind the scenes on this one, very similar to Indiana Jones, he has such clear vision for what he wants. And it's amazing to see him articulate himself and to work with people to get what he was seeing in his mind. And one of the things I find interesting about watching Steven working is he's not a jerk about it. Like, people really seem to like working with him. And for somebody telling that many people, no, it's got to be this way and it has to do this, and the amount of control and faith that people put into him, he also seems like somebody who's wildly passionate about what he's doing. And that energy rubs off to all the people around him. And he goes out of his way to get the right people and to build them up to make them really good at what they want to do. So he went out and got the Industrial Light and Magic group. He went out and got Stan Winston and who to create these amazing dinosaur creations. And he gave them the leash to do this really exciting thing for them. And it's just really interesting to me how Steven can get everybody on their sides, even the kids. The kids, like we saw this in the E.T. episode. All the kids that worked with Steven really loved him, and he treated them like adults and stuff. Like, he would ask, a young boy, like, what do you think we should do for this scene? And how do you think the character would react in here? And it's one of those things where a director doesn't always have that patience for their actor or the people even around them. And I just have so much respect for him as a leader on a film like this.
Yeah, he's not exactly Stanley Kubrick for his actors.
No.
The special relationship he has with Drew Barrymore in that E.T. episode, and even with the actor that played Tim, he auditioned for Hook, and Spielberg really liked him and said, I'm going to find work for you, and he kept his promise, and I think that's really cool.
I think also if you look at the pictures of him working with, the actors that played Lex and Tim, a lot of them, he's down on their level. So he's not, menacing over them. That, I think, always inspired me a little bit. Like, this guy is, genuinely cares about what he's doing and cares about his company and his actors and those around him.
Yeah, and despite all that gigantic budget, you would think that they would blow the budget, but this movie finished up 12 days ahead of schedule and under budget.
Which is amazing.
Which means the budget must have been pretty hefty.
And they had, like, the tropical storm as it was going on, and they still finished early. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So there was a hurricane that hit Hawaii where they were filming, and it was pretty damaging. And to your point, it could have really hosed things up. An interesting story on that is Richard Attenborough didn't join them in the shelter in place in the hotel ballroom, which everybody was. And people were very afraid. Like, they were worried for their lives. And this was a rough storm. And he's just sleeping regular through it. And Steven Spielberg asked him later, like, how'd you sleep through that? And he goes, I lived through the Blitz.
And one of the things, like the wave shots of the waves crashing, like, that was filmed during all that too. So they probably got some good, B-reel footage for it.
Yeah, and we talked about the magic of seeing dinosaurs, but we did touch about how the dinosaurs didn't look good before. But Steven Spielberg also had the guidance to get the right people on the board to figure out how these dinosaurs should move. Not just move, but how they should breathe. And then Spielberg was really smart. I can't believe how good this movie looks CGI-wise compared to movies that come later that should have better technology, but because Steven put rain in front of it, or he only showed it for a little bit, or he used animatronics cut in, and then with CGI, he had such discipline to use the tools at his disposal. It looks really good now. That's really impressive.
Let's jump to another one of his movies that kind of stick out. Going by with what he has to work with, let's talk about Jaws. How, that shark was always, not working in the water. So he substituted it with the music, to get you going. And I think in Jurassic Park, it's kind of the same thing. You get small hints here and there to get your blood kind of going a little bit, I think that's one of his really good strong suits. Is if it's not working, he'll find a way to incorporate it to where it works.
No, you're right about that. I think Hitchcock was the one who said this, but to get the people invested and excited and to keep them thrilled, you need to give them information. And Spielberg does a good job of visually giving you information. He shows that there's a threat and that these characters are afraid, and then they shows them reacting well to it. And if you look at that formula, that sounds really simple, but you would be amazed at how many people don't do it and don't get it right. He plays that card again and again and again and again in this movie and in all of his movies. And his palette of tricks, his bag of tricks works. And it works really well here. Like, to your point, Jaws seeing this threatening image, the thrill ride of an Indiana Jones kind of come through in this one. The magic and the majestic nature and the awe of an E.T. and stuff like that. I mean, all of that's coming together here. And at the core of all of these movies are his characters and his people. And he makes you care about the people because the dinosaurs aren't actually on the screen all that much. He limits the on-time screen for the dinosaurs as well.
Yep. To me, it's always the use of puppets. You get those use of puppets right, and it stands the test of time. The worst parts of this movie, the parts that you kind of say, something's not quite right if you're really looking at it, is the CGI scenes. There are portions where you can tell that it's a flat background and a green screen. But the Velociraptor puppets or the animatronics that they built, even with Jaws is the animatronic shark, those hold up. Those are still scary and awe-inspiring today.
Absolutely. And he did his homework, too. They got a accomplished paleontologist, Jack Horner was his name, to come in, and all that information about, the bird-like relationships, that was kind of new in the science field at this point. Dinosaurs had always been thought of as these slow-moving, lumbering creatures, and to see them move like that was something nobody had seen before. And to get the science right, to do your homework, Crichton did a lot of homework himself in what he wrote. So, he was using well-founded source material, but then to follow through with that and to drive the people who were doing the visuals and the creation, to your point, they didn't use that stop motion in the end because it wasn't the right tool in the end, and they stumbled across the right tool as they were doing it.
Are you saying they spared no expense?
They spared no expense.
I love that being repeated throughout the movie, and you just keep seeing things where they cheap out on, even down to the buttons. Like, who makes the on button red? There's just so many odd little things that Spielberg puts through there. It's like, this makes no sense that an on button would be red, or you see just cheapness throughout the entire island. As Hammond saying, we spared no expense, not paying our people, automating things, doing everything like that, taking the cheap routes.
Going back to Russell with the stop motion CGI and that, one of the hidden secrets, I guess, that is in the script that's in the movie is where they use, Phil Tippett for CGI and Murn uses CGI, but Tippett was a stop motion. And when they did the test and showed, like, hey, look at these CGI dinosaurs, Tippett was said to have said, I think I'm extinct. And then when they're walking up the staircase, Dr. Grant goes, I think we have a job. Going back to what you said about him dropping the raptor claw. And then Malcolm says, don't you mean extinct? So I like how they pulled that, group meeting into the film. That always stands with me.
Yeah, and that scene, they were using the computers to make the Gallimimus run in a herd. And Steven saw that, and he said, that's the future of movies. And they made a choice. That was not what they expected, to can the stop motion claymation, kind of like where you make a model and you move it, snap, move it, snap, and then it all goes together. They chose to embark on this bold new direction. And, Phil Tippett was in charge of all that stop motion stuff, and he was lamenting it, but don't feel too bad for him. He was brought in to oversee the movements of that computer thing. So it's kind of an interesting transitional point where somebody who's the master at doing it, this older craft this way, is also then hopping into and overseeing, pioneering the new way of doing it.
Something that I just thought of and it's one of our older topics we were talking about with the recasting, if we could. What do you think about Sean Connery being Hammond?
Yeah, that was another one of those alternative castings I didn't get into, but I think he'd be awesome at it. I think he turned it down, but I like Attenborough so much, so it's hard to see anybody else in the role once he's done it. But I liked the idea of Connery doing it. I think he would have been good. I think you might have gotten the darker John Hammond.
Yeah, Attenborough is more like grandfather. I see him as a grandfather.
Colonel Sanders.
Yeah. There definitely is a 50% Colonel Sanders in there for sure. Yeah, that character in the book is a lot more strong-willed and, unflinching and always moving forward and has his vision and he drives through. And in some ways, I really admire that in him. But, he becomes blinded to those things around him. So, I did want to mention the original ending that they had set up to do was they were climbing on the skeletons in the museum portion of the park, much like the end here, but they were going to drop the skeletons onto the raptors below, crushing and impaling them, and then Hammond was supposed to come in with a gun and then shoot their last one, and then they all get away safe, which is not nearly as cool as what they decided to do, which was to take the T-Rex, come in and then eat the raptors, and the raptors are distracted, and that's enough time for them to get out. So kind of the T-Rex ends up saving the day. So another one of those changes that Spielberg made during the process of it was a great decision.
Yeah, he was right to call T-Rex the star of the show.
100%.
Yes, yeah. I'm actually surprised none of us picked the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And what dinosaur would you be? That just seems like that's most people's favorite.
I was trying to go for least popular,
the deep cuts. Yeah.
Yeah, the deep edition.
Chris, you're the hipster of dinosaurs.
Yep, get my cold brew call today.
What'd you think about the location where they chose to shoot this, Chris?
I think Hawaii was a good fit. It fits that tropical vibe because, they say it's off of the coast of Costa Rica, even though they met in San Juan and there's ocean behind them, but we'll ignore that since it is, landlocked. But I think it fits it. And then with the tropical environment, it gives you that dinosaur like you saw in the books, the tropical plants and all that. So I really think Hawaii was the correct choice. Maybe could have done something, I don't know, Brazil or even shooting Costa Rica itself. But I think for the mountainscapes, they really nailed it in Hawaii.
The plan was to go to Costa Rica first, but Spielberg wanted to go somewhere with better established infrastructure.
Yeah, Costa Rica has no military, so makes sense.
He had shot in Hawaii before during his Indiana Jones runs there, so it was returning to something that he knew worked.
Yeah, makes sense.
Of course, there was a big storm.
It's probably a little like Adam Sandler, too. If you have the chance to go shoot in Hawaii for your movie, go do that.
Yeah.
Honestly, the waterfalls, the topography, the coastline, the jungles, it's breathtaking. And again, to the authenticity, I mean, I think this is just as impressive as anything that you'll see in Avatar, which is you can't create something that amazing and breathtaking as the nature's design. And so that's another one of those things that's just adds to the awe of this movie. When that helicopter comes down for a landing next to the waterfall there, it's just it's amazing. And as you enter the gate with all that lush greenery around, it's you as an adult even are sitting there feeling like an 8-year-old kid in your seat going like, oh boy, we're going into the park.
Mark my words, before I die, I will visit that waterfall.
Well, just even the giant majestic gates, I don't know what it is about large gates opening. Maybe it makes me think of castles or something like that from my childhood, but that's just pleasing. They could have been smaller vehicle-sized gates, but you just have this giant Jurassic Park slow opening Lord of the Rings style gate.
And then the quote, it was like, what do they have in there? King Kong? Yeah. It's like...
Pretty much. They spared no expense.
On big gates and not the IT department.
That's an interesting thing, not to dive back into the difference in the book, but Nedry in the book is not an employee of Hammond. He's the contractor of his own security system, and Hammond does stiff him, and then not only does that, but smears him and runs him down, and Nedry loses a lot more business. So Nedry's, I guess you could say, has more just cause in the book to be angry at Hammond. So again, everything in this movie makes Hammond 100 times more likable than he is in the book. Are there any other special effects things that you wanted to include? Because this is a deep well, Chris.
Okay, so when it comes to special effects, like you were talking about with the location, I'm going to put them side by side because a lot of the times in movies, they'll use like mats to paint the backgrounds, or they'll do CGI, flora or fauna. I think with where its location is, it just fit in with the dinosaurs. It was a simple scene, but the whole shoot her scene when they're tasing her and shooting her and stuff, just the look in her eyes kind of stares you in, and I would call that probably a simple special effect, but that with the lighting that was going on, the flashing, that's one of those parts that stood with me for a long time. I guess the other big special effect that really stands out too is the whole T-Rex paddock explorer crush scene,
Oh, that's such a good scene.
And her walking in front of the explorer, and then when she pulls her head down and the light shines it and her pupil dilates, that just looks so real for a reptile.
Chad, you mentioned this earlier. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on, you said a wet dinosaur is heavy?
They had an extremely hard time keeping it upright, getting the jaws to actually function, and I forget how many hundreds of pounds this
15,000 pound machine.
Yeah, it wasn't fully built, but it was enough to get on screen the parts that you needed to see. But yeah, getting the jaws to work and lowering it to the point that it wasn't going to crush the children, which, that's important, unions and all. But the challenges they had in that rainstorm. But even for me, when you go behind the scenes and you see the people dressed as the raptors in little black suits, it reminds me of there's a famous shot of the Ninja Turtles movie where all the Ninja Turtles are the newer ones. They're all these guys in these black suits with like shells above them or something like that. There's 4 of them. It's an odd scene, but this movie actually made it work.
Yeah, so Stan Winston created all this machinery at the same time in the shop, and when they got it there for the Tyrannosaurus Rex scene, he looked concerned when Spielberg was talking about having rain and water and stuff, and he's like, these machines aren't made to get wet. You know that, right? And Spielberg's like, no, I have to have the rain in the scene. I can't cut it because it's an important part of what he wanted to do. And it is really important that it is raining. It makes the scene so much more intense. At the end of the day, Stan Winston said, I guess I'm a gambler. Let's just go for it. And he shrugged, and this very, very expensive equipment, they just started getting it really wet. And Spielberg said the machinery would start to become overtaxed because the foam rubber skin would absorb tons of water, and it started to shake like it was cold. And it just would shake back and forth like a kind of a seizure-y, kind of shivery kind of shake. And so they would cut, and he said that they would have crew members out there, like teenage boys, hitting it, whacking this Tyrannosaurus Rex to knock the water out of it with a bunch of towel shams and stuff like that between takes, just trying to get it, wrung out enough to the point where it would run again, and then they would run the water while it was running. So it was a difficult balancing act to try and get the machinery to hold up.
That'd be like a childhood dream of mine, just whack a giant T-Rex like a piñata. That'd be amazing.
Another fun one was digital face replacement. A lot of the stunt people have their faces cut out and put it on with the actors' faces. So, for instance, when Lex falls out of the ceiling and is hanging there and dangling and the raptors are chomping at her feet, it's an intense scene, but that's a full-grown woman doing that stunt scene.
Yes.
And it's really interesting. Basically, it's like Photoshop, but, frame by frame for video, and they face map the actor doing the screaming, and they put it on there, and that's pretty new for this 90s period of point of time, and it looks pretty good. And again, Spielberg doesn't just jam it down your throat and say, here it is. It's in the moment of all this other stuff going on, and he's really good at using the tools that he had, but also knowing how to frame it.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I didn't notice still.
Was it I think the theater release, you actually see the stunt woman, but then when they released it, they fixed it.
There's a lot of little fun facts on this. The poop that Ellie shoves her hands into didn't smell bad at all. It's not poop. It was mud, straw, clay, and they needed flies to get around it somehow, so they filled it full of honey, so it actually smelled good. And Laura Dern to this day says that she has kids come up to her and be like, "Are you the lady who stuck her hand in the poop?" So, Oscar winner, but also she'll always be that lady who stuck her hand in poop.
I was always surprised, like, well, the Triceratops is only so tall. How is this massive amount of poop coming out of that?
I imagine that was more than one go at it.
They're really big animals, I guess. I don't know. They're going to need a lot of dung beetles on that island, that's for sure.
Or did you ever notice, like, when Nedry gets spit on, that's his hand smacking himself with the spit?
No, I did not notice that. That's cool.
Yeah, rewatch it. It's like he had the venom poison in his hand, and when it spits, he smacks himself in the face. And that's how it gets on his face.
The hardest scene was the one where the T-Rex is chasing the Jeep. It took him over 2 months to do that. I mean, just knowing how to make the dinosaur move was a challenge. There was no frame of reference for an animal that large, and to try and think about how to make it look natural, make it look good. That was a big part of it. So they said that was the hardest scene that they had to do.
In the T-Rex paddock scene, Sam Neill actually burned himself while filming with the flare. Took a little chunk out.
Mm.
And that whole scene in general, like with the T-Rex coming with the water, I heard that's inspired by someone was listening to Earth, Wind, and Fire, and the bass was making the water move, and that's when they put the string underneath the board and pulled on it, and they were able to recreate that ripple effect.
Yeah. They said that was the hardest.
Another fun sound note was all the dinosaur roars were a combination of other animals. So the T-Rex is a lion and an alligator taking different parts of their frequencies, overlapping them together and amplifying it. The raptors were a combination of dolphins, dolphins, and the low frequencies of a walrus coming together to create these great shrieking sounds. It's just they did such a good job to create that. Or, the T-Rex footsteps are sound recordings of redwood trees being timbered and falling to the ground.
Dilophosaurus was howler monkeys, hawks, swans, and I think a rattlesnake.
You're missing the funniest one, though, when the velociraptors are communicating. That's the same sound as tortoises having sex.
That is, yes, yeah, I did read that one, yeah. Sexy.
So someone had that in their memory bank of, what would make a good raptor sound? Tortoises having sex, and everyone stared at that guy.
Now, one big part of the sound of this is the soundtrack. Chris, do you like the music of Jurassic Park?
I do. I had the cassette tape to date us again, back to that time. I wore it out. I still find that the end credits is one of the most relaxing sounds. And the one that really stands out to me is a song on there called A Tree for My Bed. When they're up in the tree, that means a lot. Just, again, memory-wise. All the songs, I just remember the scenes, or like when Hammond and Ellie are talking in the visitor center about the flea circus, and the song that goes with that's remembering Petticoat Lane. Just all the music, John Williams, hit it out of the park. I would like to hear, his worst music, because I can never think of a bad John Williams soundtrack. So I want like the stuff he threw away to see, how good that sounds.
Yeah, it's an iconic soundtrack. Chad, what are your thoughts on it?
I've just got to echo the Williams magic. It's majestic. It's perfectly encapsulating what you're seeing when you hear that main theme, and as you first get on the island and you see the Brachiosaurus herds and that theme kicks in. It's perfectly capturing what you're seeing of just, this is new, this is awe-inspiring, and I can't say enough about John Williams' work. From Jaws to Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, he just created another icon.
It's like the fanfare. You always hear that fanfare when you see like the main dinosaurs or the main characters in like Star Wars, that fanfare. In Jaws, just that scary, the dun 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 dun. Like, he's a genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had said that he wanted to create pieces that would convey a sense of awe, fascination, and given it dealt with the overwhelming happiness and excitement that would emerge from seeing dinosaurs live. He said he wanted to have a feeling that was almost a religious type of feeling of walking into a powerful cathedral, and he needed to have that deep of an impact for people to kind of give you the chills. And, when working with animals and that are gone, the danger and the scary scenes like being in the kitchen, he said that gave him the opportunity to push the orchestra to the instrument limits of what they can do. And it was a really fun project for him to do. For a guy who's just made such an amazing body of music, this one is very close to the top for me. I might have E.T. as my favorite piece of music my favorite soundtrack that he's done, but this actually might be even ahead of the Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Superman and Jaws. I mean, this one might be my number 2.
Wow. High praise.
That's pretty high. I think Jurassic Park, the music relates to all the scenes so perfectly. Like Indiana Jones, I can think of the theme song. Jaws, I can think of, when you're not seeing the shark, but you're hearing the music. Close Encounters, I can relate a lot of that soundtrack to the scenes as well. But for me, Jurassic Park, each scene, each sound part of the soundtrack, I can just picture it in my head.
You guys ready to hand out some awards?
Love to.
Let's do it.
All right. Chris, MVP.
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
That's a great choice.
So yeah, T-Rex is my final answer.
Great pick. Yeah. Chad, MVP.
Along those lines, I'm going with Industrial Light and Magic. Just what they created is still a marvel today, and this movie makes me feel like a little kid every time I revisit it.
Yeah. I grow more and more appreciative of Steven Spielberg, not just the body of work that he's done, but how he works with people. And so he's my MVP. Really a great mind and seems like a really solid dude to be around. It's really fun to see him talk about how enthusiastic he is for all this. So his vision and his leadership is at the helm of this thing. So there's a lot of good people on board, and man, I like all these picks. And there's some good ones that we didn't pick. I mean, I'd like to give it to Michael Crichton for writing such a good story.
Yeah.
But who's your best supporting, Chris?
I'll go Dilophosaurus. I'm going to stick with the dinosaurs.
I like it. I like this theme that's emerging here. I loved the Dilophosaurus as a kid, so I'm glad you are bringing this one up. I don't think that there's any actual factual information that they spit or had frills on their neck, but I love that they took some wild stabs with it.
Yeah, completely made it up, but that's what I picture when I see that name.
If you think about it, if you reanimated animals, we would discover things about them we do not know. So, I mean, there would probably be, it might not be that, but I mean, it might be something else. Maybe they're bright orange, you don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Anytime you see this thing that you didn't know before, you might have some unexpected stuff like that. So good for you. Take a big swing.
Yeah, I think there is a dinosaur that Dilophosaurus was based on. It just couldn't spit and didn't have the frills. But I'm so glad they added the spit and the frills, because that, as a kid, like I said, that's my leg hurt. When its frills came up, I was like, oh, geez, what is going on?
I had a Dilophosaurus that would spit water, a toy that like you would squeeze its stomach, it would suck water, and then you would spit it out.
Yeah.
But the frills always came off the neck, and it was super annoying, and I was mad that it wasn't attached. Work on that, toy makers. Now, Chad, who's your best supporting?
Talked about her already, but Laura Dern. I can't imagine someone else in this role, and we named a lot of heavy hitters that would do a great job, but what Laura brings to this movie is irreplaceable.
Love it. Great pick. Mine is going to be Jeff Goldblum. He takes what is actually a pretty small character, and it lives such a larger than life in the book. I mean, to me, this is my favorite Jeff Goldblum performance. I mean, this is probably my favorite Sam Neill, my favorite Laura Dern performances as well. But to me, I particularly like Jeff Goldblum, and this is just his perfect movie. For me, I love it.
It is a perfect laugh, too.
Yeah.
Shirtless Jeff Goldblum is best Goldblum.
Yeah.
Must go faster.
What a strange shot to include. Like, most of it makes sense. There were a couple scenes like the electric fence scene that was completely unnecessary. Although I'm glad Tim got shocked. That made me feel better.
Shirtless Jeff Goldblum. Have you seen the GIF? I'm going to say GIF because it's graphic interchange format, but the GIF where they took Grant and put him on Goldblum's chest as he's breathing, like the Triceratops. It's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
My wife found an image of the Thriller album with Michael Jackson sitting on the cover with his shirt pulled back, with Goldblum's face superimposed on the Thriller album.
That's good.
Yeah. But no, Goldblum changed his role too. I mean, the whole scene where he gets the flares and also drives the dinosaur away from the kids. In the book, he's cowardly and is running with Gennaro into the bathroom and just gets squashed and stuff. But again, he's the one who's representing, should you do this kind of thing? And so you shouldn't dislike him in that manner. And so he made a number of changes with the character that are really cool. So Goldblum, Pittsburgh's own Goldblum.
There you go.
Yep. Hidden gem, Chris.
I have two. And for me, I always like to look for the bloopers in movies, especially after watching them so many times. So there's two that stick out in my mind. One is in the T-Rex paddock. On the left side, you can clearly see a potted plant with the potting and everything, just kind of chilling over there on the side. And the other one, I tried to mention with the fence and climbing the fence and shocking it. There's a part when they're painting, you can see the fence is ending, and they could have just walked around it instead of climbing over it. So my hidden gems are the bloopers, if you will.
Chad, who's your hidden gem, or what is your hidden gem?
I'm going with B.D. Wong. He was actually billed pretty highly, and it's a brief cameo, but he reoccurs throughout the series. And just the way he responded to Goldblum with almost a condescension of, nothing's going to go wrong. This is perfect. They're all females, and you're an idiot. I really enjoyed his character, and I'm glad he gets to come back.
Yes, life will find a way. My hidden gem's going to be Phil Tippett and Stan Winston. So I have two as well. And those are, Phil Tippett was in charge of the dinosaurs' motions in the CGI world, and Stan Winston was in charge of the animatronics. And similar to what Chad said for his MVP, these guys and their crew and all the people who worked with them made the magic happen of why we still love Jurassic Park to this day.
You know, Phil Tippett, he was the dinosaur supervisor in the credits. If he would have just paid attention to the dinosaurs and watched them, they never would have escaped. He had one job.
All right. And recast, we already mentioned, and I think this is going to be one of the hardest recast episodes we've done. But, Chris, it's got to be done. If you had to replace somebody in this movie and put somebody in their place, who would it be?
Okay, I'm going to go far out with this one.
I love it.
But hear me out. Jeff Goldblum, he's kicking rocks. I would put in a serious, kind of dark Robin Williams.
I love Robin Williams. I trust him.
Like his serious roles, he does so good. And he has enough of that, like, quirkiness to be like, I think he could do a really good job explaining chaos theory. I can see him in The Explorer with Ellie and the whole, like, explaining the water rolling. Like, I think he would have done a really good job as Malcolm.
But is he threatening to steal your girl, though?
That chest hair, of course. He's like his arm hair and his chest hair. It's the 90s. He had it in the bag.
Chad, who's your recast?
I'm going after the kids. Big surprise.
I
Joseph
knew it.
Mazzello.
I knew it. This guy does not like kids.
Yeah, I am playing the role of Grant here, but Tim was the older brother in the books. I think you could actually get Zachary Ty Bryan, who played Brad on Home Improvement, to age up the character.
Oh, I don't like this.
What about JTT, Jonathan Taylor Thomas?
No.
He was lit back then.
They were actually the same age, but Zachary Ty Bryan always looked older.
Do you have a Lex replacement that I can moan at as well?
No, she did a great job.
So you're okay with
I'm fine
Ariana
with
Richards
her.
then?
Yeah.
Okay. And she doesn't do a lot of acting, but she is in Tremors. So
Yes.
you can check out our Tremors episode, which was one of the very first ones that we did.
not to jump in, but what about what's her name from like Small Soldiers? She's in Spider-Man.
Kirsten Dunst.
No, I will never recommend.
Yeah, I like her, but Chad is also, not only does he hate all children, but he also hates Kirsten Dunst. So if we ever have a spin-off podcast, it's going to be Chad Hates Things.
Oh yes, I have a top 10 list of screw these kids.
I'll pre-subscribe to that. Let me know when it comes.
Yeah, I was gonna say we might need to have a spin-off episode, just one episode of child actors that Chad particularly hates.
Yeah, the worst kids in movies, absolutely.
Yeah, he doesn't even like the Jerry Maguire kid.
No. Moving on to Russell, who won't recast children.
Yeah, I will not be recasting children in this one. This is the cop out. You know, this is where I go deep into the cast and I find somebody who didn't necessarily swing it in either direction. So I'm going after Dodson, played by Cameron Thor, and I want somebody more eccentric in that role to be hiring Nedry. I want Steve Buscemi to be telling us how the shaving cream canister would work.
I thought you were going to say John Cleese, Rat Race. I'm eccentric.
That would, I mean, yeah, in a movie where everybody just nails it and is so memorable, Dodson's not. And he even has Wayne Knight pointing to him, everybody, Dodson's here, everybody.
See, no one cares.
No one cares.
He's the new movie?
But if you put Steve Buscemi in that role, maybe we might care.
Yeah, he's apparently he's coming back for the new movie.
I like it.
Oh.
So, best shot. Chris. Now, this is a tough one.
Yeah, I'm going to just do the cop-out. I will not reference the lagoon scene. I'm going to say the helicopter coming down with the falls behind it.
And the John Williams score doing its magic. I love it. Chad, best shot.
I really like the scene where the raptors have entered the room, and there's one specific raptor that stands up on a table, and he gets in the middle of a projector that's projecting the DNA sequence, and the sequence is displayed on the raptor's face, and it's just a really menacing but cool effect.
Yes.
I thought you were going to go with the raptor like steaming up the kitchen door, but that's another good raptor one there too. I'm going to go with the zoom into Tim's face in the car when he has the night vision goggles. There's the moment where it's about to get real and you are afraid. And that's just another one of those great moments of Spielberg is showing you that, you should be afraid. And then he'll explain why, and then he'll watch the people leading you through it with their fear. But I had a hard time picking that.
And with that scene, like, I use a quote from that scene with my kids now when Gennaro is like, is it heavy? It's expensive, put it up.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that would be my favorite shot if it was recast with Zachary Ty Bryan in it, but
What about Macaulay Culkin?
I do like Macaulay Culkin, so
Chad hates him.
He probably
I'm fine
does.
with Macaulay. I like his brother more, but
That's a strange thing to say. Okay. Or sorry, best scene, Chris.
When Ellie and Hammond are talking in the visitor center after her seeing, what happened outside, her running in, and just him telling his story of his childhood and what he's trying to accomplish. That goes back to you talking about Spielberg, how he's really good at framing the dialogue scenes. And I think that one is just perfect, how the camera swoops and slowly frames him up.
the ice cream scene.
Yep.
I like that.
She made you want some ice cream in that, I bet.
Yeah. And it's still there. It's been out, for all day, but it's still frozen. Weird.
Yeah. Now, Chad, best scene.
I don't think the awe of the T-Rex's escape and just the carnage that ensues can be outdone for me. That's the scene for me of, oh, crap.
Yeah, I mean, crushing cars and...
Each one of those cables breaking and go flying by.
Yeah, that's a great one. And that was my runner-up, but the only one that to me that tops that is the Raptors in the kitchen with Lex and Tim. That is so intense. Watching these raptors talk to each other, move around, their motions. I don't know. I was familiar with a lot of dinosaur types, but I hadn't really fallen in love with the Velociraptor until this movie. And man, seeing them here in this scene just showed you how formidable they might have been.
See, I was too busy being mad at Tim, because once again, someone has to risk their life to save his immobile backside. He just gets paralyzed by fear. That's his one defining trait.
He's a kid. Okay.
Yeah, Lex was a kid. She was useful.
In the theaters, I remember like when the raptor's foot landed and it shows that shot of it like tapping its nail, the big talon. I remember the audience laughing during that to like kind of break the ice and suspension a little bit. That's one memory I have. And then I remember like let's save Tim.
It's like, can dinosaurs open doors? No, probably not.
Opening door. Click. No, I love that scene so much. So intense. Now, best quote, Chris.
Best quote. So, if the Pirates of the Caribbean break down, the pirates don't eat the tourists.
I love that one.
That's quality Goldblum in action there. I love that. Yeah. Chad, what about you? Best quote?
Life finds a way.
I oddly enough didn't go Goldblum. I had him in my superlatives, but I'm gonna go with Sam Jackson and hold on to your butts. The co-script writer David Koepp was working on Death Becomes Her, and he heard Robert Zemeckis say, "Hold on to your butts," and he wrote it down in a little notebook as like, that's a funny line. I want to use that again someday. And 1 year later, he put it into Jurassic Park. So
that's awesome. I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's funny how low billed Sam Jackson is in this movie. He's not a household name yet, but just goes to show you how awesome this cast is. We didn't even mention him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, as a kid, all I thought of him was it's the guy that chain smokes. Because, the 90s, smoking's bad. All that guy does is smoke. Like, what's he doing?
I do have a runner-up for best quote. I often do say, "You clever girl."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, this is a very quotable movie. I use, you were so preoccupied with whether you could, you never stopped to consider whether you should. I use that quite a bit.
Mary, for whatever reason, latched onto the line of, "We have a T-Rex," and I'm sorry,
Yes.
we have a T-Rex.
My runner-up would be God creates dinosaurs, God destroys dinosaurs, God creates man, man destroys God, man creates dinosaurs.
My third runner-up just has to be the Jeff Goldblum laugh. Nah.
Or when you gotta go, you gotta go.
I loved that as a kid so much. Change one thing. Chris.
I don't want to be Team Chad for this, but the kids.
Yes!
Wow.
I think
they're good. Go on, though.
They kind of have like a good bond, but it does, I will resonate with Chad. It's like, someone has to save Tim's butt. And I mean, female power, I'll give it to Lex, female power, but just, him getting shocked, him getting chased by raptors, that kid needs a lucky rabbit foot or something. So I would just try to redo that a little bit, maybe equal the odds some more with Lex getting in some sticky situations, and maybe Tim help or Ellie help or, someone help.
Or you could have consolidated them into like one additional adult and you'd still be okay.
Tim
Lex
made Grant not hate kids anymore, which was a big theme in the movie, though. So
it didn't have to be. I support this. I'm over here doing my good.
Yeah.
But
all right, Chad.
I'm asking about that book. Have you read this book by so-and-so? Hey, the book by so-and-so? And just the look on like Alan's face. Like that just cracks me up still.
So Chad, if you had to change one thing, and not two things who are people who are kids, what one thing would you change?
That's all right. I have a backup change one thing. So Malcolm is almost useless for half of the film, and I'm aware of the book. He's even less useful, but I just want something more for him after he gets injured. Something for him to do other than to lay there shirtless. Which is great, but I want more Goldblum.
He got his butt beat by a T-Rex.
Would you prefer him to just be like, I told you so. I told you so the whole time?
I would love to see some of that. Just a little bit of, now is not the time to be smug, but I'm feeling a little smug.
Yeah. So my change one thing is going to be Arnold's hand. that Ellie picks up in the room. It looks fake. It's in a movie where everything looks really good. The disconnected hand from Sam Jackson doesn't look good.
It's like there was a Spirit Halloween store, and they just went and got a fake hand. That's what it looks
Everything looks really good in this movie except for the hand. And I want to say, replace it with just some bloody glasses on the floor that are Arnold's. That's all I need. That'll work. Like when Ellie walks in and she sees bloody glasses on the floor, that's all I need. He's done.
Like a half-burned cigarette.
Yeah, sure. Throw that in there too. But I'm disappointed that someone didn't say, yeah, we're not using that hand. Yeah. Now, Chris, before we go in and give our rating, where can we hear you?
You can find me on every streaming platform there is out there. My website is whatdoyoudopodcast.com, or just use your iTunes podcast, Spotify, you name it. What Do You Do Podcast, the career podcast. Blue logo, can't miss it. And all of the episodes are on the website, whatdoyoudopodcast.com.
Sounds awesome. And it's the time of the show. On a 5-star scale, half-star intervals, Chris, what would you rate Jurassic Park?
My heart wants to rate it a full 5 stars, but I just can't do that. I'll say 4.5.
What makes your brain talk louder than your heart?
I want to say it's the most perfect movie ever, but I know it's not, just because of some of the small, like I said, the potted plant and the fence scene. Like now that kind of ruins it for me, but yeah, 4.5, because the cast, phenomenal, the filming, phenomenal, everything's phenomenal with it, but I just don't want to give it my full 5 stars. That way it still leads above all the other movies.
Okay. Chad, on a 5-star scale, half-star intervals, what about you?
Both my heart and head say 5 stars. I'm a little kid surrounded by dinosaurs with a big goofy grin on my face throughout this entire movie. And I love it, and I look forward to my daughter being old enough, she loves dinosaurs now, to share this majesty with her.
All right, time out. I'm changing mine to 5 stars now because that makes sense. So yeah, mine's 5 stars now too.
I love it. That's the first midstream 5-star transformation we've had. I love it.
Because I don't want to say I forgot about my kids, but that's like they watch it, they enjoy it, and so when I watch it with them and I see it, it's like I see myself as a kid with them watching it, and that's the exact same reaction I had. So yeah, that's my justification. 5 stars.
All right, and I'm going to join you guys in the 5-star club. It had such a big impact culturally. It had a big impact on our generation, and it still captures people's imaginations. You know what? To be a movie in 1993 and still look this good, I mean, there's a lot of movies that come out for 10 years after this that don't look this good. And even from a technical standpoint, there's nothing to nitpick here, and I love it. So this is cinema at its finest.
Yes.
Excellent.
Chad, do you want to help me pick a movie for next time?
I would love to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next time, we're actually going to come back to you with a special where we're going to count down the top 10 movies of 2010.
In our opinions.
No, they're undisputed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we checked them.
We will be unanimous, and it will be a very boring podcast. I agree.
All right. Chris, thanks for joining us, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And to all the lords, ladies, and knights, the Retro Movie Roundtable, we invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Subscribe, rate, and review to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at movies_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And producing and providing this podcast is fun but not free, so we invite you to support the show at our Patreon page, patreon.com/Retro Movie Roundtable. Any contribution is much appreciated, and we'll put it into the show to make it better. So as always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other, and watch more movies. Chad?
History isn't kind to men who play God.